Good afternoon. I'm Joanna Behrens, President and Zero Food Waste Chair of the Sustainable Events Network, Florida and Caribbean. SENFC is pleased to collaborate with Florida International University's Chaplin School of Hospitality for the third year as we present webinar content during Food Waste Prevention Week that is relevant to the events and hospitality industries. I am pleased to introduce our first of two webinars today, Zero Food Waste at Large-Scale Events. As an event planner engaged in volunteering to combat food waste within our industry, I'm literally straddling the logistics of the anticipated food rescues that will occur over the next 7 days as South Florida plays host to the famed Rock the Oceans Tortuga Music Festival on Fort Lauderdale Beach this weekend, while also juggling the logistics of this webinar. Will the windy, rainy, and stormy weather conditions impact the festival's attendance? Which local charities can be counted on to show up with the necessary transportation at just the right time to pick up the leftover food? Who will pack the food and who will supply the disposable pans and lids? These are just a few questions that are relevant to today's first webinar. But first and foremost, we as event professionals want to be as strategic as possible when planning for food and beverage at an event, conference, or festival. And that begins with the pre-planning first. There is no one better to address this topic than our first speaker, Lisa Accardi, Events Manager for ReFed. ReFed is a national nonprofit dedicated to ending food loss and waste across the U.S. food system by advancing data-driven solutions. Lisa Accardi serves as ReFed's events manager, overseeing the planning, management, and execution of ReFed's events, including the annual upcoming Food Waste Solutions Summit. She has over 20 years experience managing events, projects, and communications for both large corporations and nonprofits, and resides in Northern California. Please put your questions in the chat and I will be fielding them after all of our panelists have presented. Thank you. Welcome, Lisa.
Thank you. Let me just get my slides up. Okay. Thank you, Joanna. I'm so excited to be here today and to be a part of Food Waste Prevention Week. This week is very close to our hearts. So as Joanna mentioned, my name is Lisa Accardi, and I'm the events manager for ReFed. And for those of you who are unfamiliar with ReFed, we are a national nonprofit working to end the food waste crisis in this country. Using data-driven solutions to solve the problem, our goal is to reduce the amount of food we waste by 50% by 2030. So you may be thinking reducing half of our food waste is no easy feat and 2030 is not that far away. Well, you are correct. But while it's not easy, it is attainable. That's why in 2020, ReFed created a roadmap to 2030, which provides a detailed plan of how to get us there. This blueprint for action spans across the food system and identifies 7 key action areas, showing where the food system must focus its efforts to achieve our goals. So now that you know a little more about what ReFed does, let's dive a little deeper for a better understanding of food waste. So what's the problem with food waste anyway? On average, every year, 35% of all food produced in this country goes uneaten. Most of this food is perfectly fine, yet it goes straight to a landfill or is simply left unharvested in the fields to rot. Put another way, that's $408 billion a year that is spent on food that goes uneaten. Meanwhile, 50 million Americans, that's 1 in 6 Americans, are food insecure. Now, that is just insane. The environmental impact of food waste is huge as well. Uneaten food in the United States accounts for 4% of its total greenhouse gas emissions, or the same emissions as 21% of the cars on the road. And food waste also utilizes 14% of our fresh water, 19% of fertilizer, 18% of our cropland, and while landfills are filling up across the country, the EPA reports that more food reaches landfills than any other item in our trash and takes up 24% of all landfill space. Plus, once it's in the landfill, it releases methane gas, which is 25 times more potent than carbon dioxide. In fact, if food waste were a country, it would be the third largest greenhouse gas emitter next to China and the US, the two largest polluters in the world. So now that we know the gravity of the food waste problem overall, let's discuss food waste at events. A recent study conducted by BCD Incentives found that the average event wastes 20 to 30% of all the food it produces, and that overordering or overproduction accounts for 10% of the food waste, which means half of all event food waste is because of overordering or overproduction. And what is the most wasted food at events? Salad dishes top the chart at 40%. This is likely because caterers are often reluctant to donate salad items. Interestingly, you'll notice alternative main dishes such as vegan or gluten-free and specialty dishes such as spicy food had the lowest percentage of waste. This suggests that these items were not overproduced or overordered. And while not specific to events on this chart, the food service industry overall, which includes catering, generates almost 13 million tons of food waste a year. As you can see, plate waste is the main contributor along with catering overproduction. And notice that this food is mostly going to a landfill with only 13% being composted. While all this food waste is happening, the research also shows that half of all event feedback is about food, and 20% of all food-based feedback is regarding the amount of food waste. This shows that food and food waste issues are very important to attendees, so we must put an emphasis on this issue. And luckily, there is hope. The data I shared is staggering, but the good news is we can solve this problem. ReFed estimates that a $14 billion annual investment can reduce food waste by 45 million tons each year. Plus, every year it would save 4 trillion gallons of water and recover the equivalent of 4 billion meals for those in need. It would also reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 75 million tons, which is equal to 58 million cars on the road, all while creating 51,000 jobs and reaching our ultimate goal of reducing food waste by 50%. Okay, we know that food waste is a huge problem and there are solutions out there. So what can we do to minimize it? At ReFed, we practice what we preach. So I'm going to highlight the strategies we took at one of our own events, our annual Food Waste Solutions Summit. In 2022, we held our Food Waste Solutions Summit at the University of Minnesota. We had 400 in-person attendees over 2.5 days, and we partnered with D'Amico Catering. Now, this long, exhaustive list are the strategies we implemented in order to reduce and limit food waste at our summit. I'm going to go through them, and I encourage you to utilize these in your next event. The first is get the attendee count right. Ask your attendees which meals they plan to attend in the registration. This will give you the most accurate head count. And don't overorder. There's a real fear of running out, but be strategic on your food and beverage guarantees. Offer a variety of meal options. Consider staffing the buffet to limit portion sizes. For our summit, we made assumptions that many attendees wouldn't attend early breakfast, for example. This led us to calculating servings anywhere from 15 to 60% below the attendee count. Add a food waste policy clause to your contracts. Discuss your zero waste strategy during contracting to ensure their buy-in, and write a food waste policy into your contracts. Include requirements for composting, surplus donation, and a food waste audit, and ensure the venue understands the Good Samaritan law and how it protects them. Use the full product. For example, at our summit, beet leaves from a roasted beet tartare were used in pesto the following day, and the entire broccoli was shaved into the salad at lunch. Finally, we used fruit trimmings from breakfast for our smoothies at breaks, and we also served upcycled snacks and beverages. Next is repurpose and upcycle leftover food into new meals. Leftover items from previous meals were offered again later in our summit. For example, cucumber smoothie shots from our happy hour were offered again during lunch the next day. But yes, they were non-alcoholic. Next is source local, sustainable, and seasonal items. These items require less transportation, therefore reducing their carbon footprint. Offer water refill stations. We eliminated single-use plastic bottles and encouraged reusable water bottles by only offering water stations. Offer all condiments in bulk. Eliminate single-serve packets of ketchup, creamer, mayonnaise, sugar. Offer all that in bulk. Make a food donation plan. There will always be leftover food, no matter how many efforts you take. We had a partnership with Second Harvest Heartland to rescue our leftovers for local food banks. Partner with your local food rescue or food bank to pick up your leftover food. Also, provide to-go containers at the buffets for attendees to take the food with them. Compost what's left over. Whatever couldn't be donated or repurposed, we composted. Set up a local composting service at your venue and place compost bins near the meals so plate waste can also be captured. And finally, conduct a food waste audit. We brought on Meet Green as our sustainability partner to measure our food waste. Measuring food waste requires separating all the waste, including all spoiled food, trimmings, and plate waste. But by measuring your waste, you will be able to calculate not just the type of food being wasted, but the financial implications. Track and share this data to better understand quantities needed and where there's potential for waste. And finally, this shows our food waste reduction efforts really paid off. Over the course of the summit, we only produced 30 pounds of food waste, which is remarkable. And that ultimately was composted. We saved about 8,000 liters of water by choosing a venue that recycles, used 100% of the food items in our menus, saved a little over 100,000 liters of water by using reusable serviceware, saved 2,300 kilowatts of energy by eliminating single-serve plastic bottles, and overall saved about 65,000 kilograms of carbon dioxide from the environment. That's like taking 10,000 car-driven miles off the road. So these are exciting results from our efforts, and I hope you learned something and feel you have strategies you can implement into your events. But conversely, we are always still learning ourselves. So I'm happy to discuss these strategies further and connect after the event. I'll put my contact info into the chat box. And finally, if you're interested, our 2023 Food Waste Solutions Summit is May 16th to the 18th in St. Louis. We will be offering a virtual component too, so I will put a link to register in the chat. Thanks so much.
Oh, Lisa, thank you so much. That was wonderful. I want to make sure everybody can hear me because I'm working off of a phone here as backup. So Lisa, nod if you can hear me.
I can hear you.
Okay, great. You know, I can't emphasize enough the pre-planning and the strategic planning in advance, because the goal is not to have a food rescue. The goal is to do such a good job as an event planner that you have literally planned that food out to just the perfect amount. And I always say, is it so terrible if you run out of something? Goodness knows it happens at your house. But one of the key takeaways, and I do encourage people to put questions in the chat, which I will field as we're going through the other panelists and make sure we address at the end, but getting that attendee count right. If you have a program that is held over and over on an annual basis, making sure that you get that history and track it and use that history for your pre-planning with your food and beverage, and of course, putting it in the contract, the clause in the contracts. Those are two of my favorites. So thank you so much, Lisa. We're going to move on because we've got so much to talk about here. And I am pleased to introduce our next two panelists. Diane and Sid Mandelbaum founded the global award-winning anti-poverty think tank, Rock and Wrap It Up, now in its 28th year. With 5,000 members in 500 cities and 5 countries, the organization feeds millions each year and teaches how to use contracts to obligate the donation of excess food from events. In 2007, Rock and Wrap It Up began the Hunger Advocacy Team, creating and penning the Federal Food Donation Act of 2008, which encourages federal buildings to donate food from their restaurants, cafeterias, and from outside rentals to feed our nation's food insecure. The act was voted unanimously in both the House and Senate and was signed into law on June 19th, 2008 by President George W. Bush. Welcome, Diane and Sid Mandelbaum. Unmute, please. You guys are on mute.
Okay. Well, we would like to first thank Lisa and Joanna for their presentations. Rock and Wrap It Up has fed over 1 billion people, and we are very much in the background of pretty much all of what we do. The key is, as was said earlier, to pre-plan everything. And I'm going to start with how Rock and Wrap It Up got its name. First, we started in the music industry, where we found that there was so much food left over backstage at rock concerts that we came up with an idea to use the writer of a contract to direct people to basically say, before they ever got to the concert, all edible leftover food prepared but not served cannot be thrown away. Rock and Wrap It Up will arrange for the recovery. Once that's in the contract, it's as good as gold. It has to happen. And one of the things that we found is that there were, back in the early 90s when we started this, a lot of fear of being sued for sharing food. And that was cleared up in 1996 with the passage of the National Bill Emerson Good Samaritan Act. That act was reinstated and rewritten in January of this year to include not just food that's giving away at concerts and large stadiums, but food that's coming from institutions of higher education, from all schools, from restaurants. And we are all protected from liability as long as safe food handling is used. Now, the contract that you are going to be working with is very personal to your own event. But just remember that you have the ability of putting into that contract something that will harvest food. And as Lisa said earlier, it is a standard of about 10% of all food is left over at the end of most events. And if it cannot be dealt with, it's going to be thrown away. It's going to go into a landfill. It's going to go into compost, where it could be feeding hungry people. And our feeling has always been, we'd rather feed someone than have it thrown away. One of the things that Rock and Wrap It Up started 17 years ago was something called the Whole Earth Calculator. All of your people now have sustainability people in their organizations. Rock and Wrap It Up started this for the Super Bowl about 12 years ago, just for the Super Bowl, where all the food, and it was over 48,000 pounds of food left over from that Super Bowl, was feeding the hungry of the city of New York. It was the Giant Stadium at the time, MetLife Stadium now. But more importantly, they were able to post the National Football League how many pounds of food were saved, how many meals did it equal, how much greenhouse gas was diverted, and how much water was saved. And all this went on the NFL website. And other than the sport teams, right now, we work amazingly with the 8 studios in Los Angeles that are always filming TV and film. We work with their craft services. And we want to make sure that that food feeds the hungry. They themselves post on their websites how much food has been saved, how many people are fed, and culturally, we become a woke generation with regard to the environment. We want them to be able to put these accolades up on their websites, and they do. Your organizations, each time that you make an event, there's no reason why at the end of the event you can't post in your organization's websites how many people you fed, how much greenhouse gas was diverted, how much water was saved. And all that can be gotten on the rockandwrapitup.org website. The Whole Earth Calculator is there. We can help you with that. If you're uncomfortable working with statistics, we can go over this with you the first time, and you'll see how simple it is. The other thing that we are very, very involved with now is making so that every event becomes some handshake into the local communities. There is no community that you're working in that does not have an at-risk population. As was said earlier, 1 out of every 6 Americans is food insecure. But how do we know that that food is feeding them in a safe manner? Well, I'm going to have Diane talk a little bit about how we decide who should be getting that food.
The way we determine which agency we're going to work with is, number one, based on distance. So the food is not traveling for a long distance. We ask that the food be prepared for travel in different types of takeaway containers. We don't encourage things like soups and liquids because some of those spoil very quickly and some of them are just really very difficult to transport. As far as the agency, we make sure that they, number one, have a certificate that is given to them by the local municipality that allows them to open up their door. They in turn are the food handling professionals. So they've been already taken classes like Chef and Child, which teaches proper food handling. And once you are then in compliance with the Bill Emerson law, you're not going to get sued. You don't have to be afraid of donating non-perishable and perishable food that's been prepared but not sold or served. You just need to make sure that the food from the buffet table is not going, but rather the backup trays. As was pointed out earlier, you're putting out smaller amounts, so you've got more in the refrigerator that is not going to take and change temperatures. We make sure that everybody knows exactly where and when they need to be for the food recovery to happen. Everybody needs to have a cell phone so that if there's something that comes up, a flat tire, traffic, whatever, communications can happen. And then it goes to the agency so that they can then serve it almost immediately. In some cases, it's the same day. In some cases, it's the next day. And it's refrigerated. We do like to have the food frozen because frozen food can have another day or so of life that can be used and it won't spoil so quickly and it's easier to transport. And again, go to rockandwrapitup.org, go to the menu bar. Under the tab that says sustainability, you'll find the calculator, and you'll be able to determine exactly how sustainable your program is.
Thank you, Diane. Some of the things that you should also think about doing. When you're speaking with a convention center, there's a good chance that the convention center already has contacts with local agencies. I would never want to reinvent the wheel. If they have an agency that's been picking up food for them for years, encourage them to speak to that agency to have the food picked up. The other things that are very important for you would be telling everyone that is attending the event that you're running that this is what you plan to do. There's a chance that if they live in the local community, we are a faith-based organization. There's a chance that they know agencies that are faith-based that already have programs that are giving food out to the at-risk communities. We very much encourage to use people that already are working in that industry. One of the things that you should be doing when you speak to caterers is finding out what are they doing and what have they done in the past to make sure that food that is prepared but not served is not going to be going away. Now, one of the things that we heard, and this was brilliant, some of the caterers have gone now to using half trays. So as the event is winding down, instead of putting out a full tray at the end of an event when you know it's slowing down, we never take trays that are already reheated. If the tray is out on a buffet, that to us is not a tray that we want to share with those that are at risk. There's a reason for this. Our immune systems are different when we're healthy than when we are at risk or when we could be outdoor people. Things that would not get us ill can get them sick. So we abhor dumpster diving, and we hear so many people are doing that. And the reason why we abhor it is that things change quickly when they are outdoors, especially in warmer climates. We want nothing to come out of a dumpster that'll feed anyone. The people that are on the line that we are looking to feed are looking to us for the guidance and the protection that we are going to keep them healthy. And you have to be part of that team with us. You have to have the common sense to know that if there is any at risk at all of food that can be spoiled, throw it away. There's enough food left over, as was said earlier. 10% of all food is not eaten at events. We want to make sure that no one that we work with to feed is going to have any problems. That's it. Thank you so much for your time. If you have any questions, please feel free to write them down and we'll answer them. God bless you.
That's great. Thank you both. And I'm not at liberty to type your website into the chat, so I'm going to ask Francis, my Wizard of Oz, if you don't mind. Sid, tell us the website domain again. Rock
Easy.
and
rockandwrapitup.org.
.org.
And that's
And
wrap with a W. Like
with the
wrap
W. Francis, I appreciate your help with that. There we go, .org. And Diane, what was the tab that you referenced again?
Sustainability.
Sustainability. And is
Sustainability. And then you're looking for the whole Earth calculator.
right. That's where you get the whole Earth calculator. And I do agree with you, as we are all getting more sophisticated in these sustainable practices, and you work for organizations that have a sustainability officer or director, the data, the facts, those kinds of the actual impacts are what everybody is looking for increasingly. And that's why it's so great to have ReFed behind us in this movement with the real hard data, so that we can continue to fight the good fight and speak to our stakeholders. And that's something I wanted to mention before we segue into Dr. John Buschman. Again, as an event planner, I'm speaking from my perspective, and many of you plan large scale events. That's why you're on this call. Some of you do small to medium events, festivals where they're outdoors involved, the elements, you're dealing with the weather. You need to have all your stakeholders on board with respect to the zero food waste initiatives, because there might be situations that get a little dicey where, well, no, we're not going to move it inside, or whatever it is. You need to have everybody, including those at the very top, agreeing in advance that if there is leftover food, it is going to be donated so that it doesn't get to be problematic at the end, and so that all your efforts are supporting the same goal. Of course, the goal is not to waste the food, but we all can say, especially in these large scale scenarios, waste is inevitable. Let's see if we can reduce it below the 10%. And with that, I'd like to introduce our third speaker, and again, invite your questions into the chat. I've also got some questions if we don't at the end. Dr. John Buschman is our final speaker. And by the way, I wanted to mention Diane and Sid are up there on Long Island in New York. So we've had Lisa Accardi out in Northern California. We moved all the way across the country to Diane and Sid in New York. And now we're down here in South Florida, where I reside, with Dr. John Buschman, who teaches global sustainable tourism at Florida International University's Chaplin School of Hospitality and Tourism. His work has centered on food waste reduction and recovery, as well as the redistribution of nutrition to homeless and food insecure populations. He is particularly interested in the role that the events industry plays, and is a key player in the Zero Food Waste initiatives at the Food Network's South Beach Wine and Food Festival, held each winter on Miami Beach. So thank you, John, for being here. And I might add, John has been a mentor of mine as I've worked in this movement for the last 7 years. And we at SENFC are truly indebted to John and to FIU for their partnership that we have here in the Florida region. So thank you, John, for being here.
Thank you, Joanna, and for the very kind words. And by the way, you were a mentor of mine first at Meeting Professionals International before either one of us dreamed of getting involved in food waste reduction. But I think we both saw the calling about the same time, so we can share that one. Thank you very much. I am here hovering on a drone above our beautiful campus, although this is a lie. It's about raining today, so I'm glad I've got a sunny picture. I'd like to share my screen if I could and go through some slides. Are you able to see my slides, everyone? Yes, thanks, Joanne.
Yes.
Okay, because it gets a little tricky when you've got two screens going here and you got the right thing going on. So we are here at the Chaplain School. Let me change that to presentation mode. There we go. Okay. And so we are at the Chaplain School here. We're part of Florida International University, one of the, I think it's the 4th or 5th largest university in the country. Our school is on its own campus on Biscayne Bay in a gorgeous location. And we teach all facets of hospitality and tourism management here at the undergraduate and graduate levels. And as Joanna pointed out, I oversee the with some co-directors, the Global Sustainable Tourism Program. So sustainability is becoming more and more important in everywhere in hospitality and tourism, as many of you are quite aware. So I am also sort of sharing the stage today with Chef John Massey, who you will meet a little bit later. He'll be on the second segment, but he and I are our cohort. We're partners in this fight against food waste, as well as the real desire to teach it to the up and coming generation of managers and owners in the hospitality industry, among the 1,500 or so students that we have studying here at the Chaplain School every year. And it's not changing. There we go. I wanted to share something that I think most of you have seen at one time or another, but it always bears repeating, and that's sort of our guideline that we always try to use to when we're thinking about what decisions that we want to make with food, whether it's events or whether it's just simple kitchen scraps from the operation of our food production classes. And that's the food recovery hierarchy of the Environmental Protection Agency, or the EPA. And as very, very simply stated here, we always go for source reduction first, reduce the volume. I think Lisa spoke to, being ordering smartly, being on the front of the problem rather than catching up later on. Next is always feeding the hungry people. Save that food, preserve it, keep it from getting contaminated, keep it at temperature, and have it available for people in need, and then so on down the line. So I want to kind of show you what we're doing here at FIU, and always keep it sort of in mind. Keep that upside down triangle there of the EPA in mind. So,
John, sorry to
Yes.
interrupt you, but we don't see that on your screen.
you don't see the festival now?
No, we see an FIU page about study abroad.
Okay, so somehow it switched screens on me. Let me see if I can.
Maybe
Thank you. Thank you,
Okay.
Lisa. I was wondering if it was because I'm on my phone.
no worries. Maybe stop your
You know?
share and start over again.
If I change shares, do you see now?
There you
Yeah,
go.
there you go.
Okay,
Yes.
it's always tricky
You're
with two
on.
screens, and it was on one screen, then switched to the other one. Okay, here we go. So I was just talking about the food recovery hierarchy, which I won't spend a lot of time on because I think most of you have seen it before, but this is sort of the guideline that we always want to keep in mind as we're making decisions about what to do with with food in every stage of the game, from ordering to preparing to discarding to donating, whatever it is that we're doing with the food, we want to keep in mind what our priorities are. So with that in mind, then, with those different priorities on that upside down triangle, we apply this to our South Beach Wine and Food Festival, which we've been running for 25, 26 years now. Started on our campus 26 years ago as a very small local event. And it just grew and grew and grew. It needed to be moved to South Beach to find a bigger outdoor venue. And what a big outdoor venue we found. And it's been growing over the years. It's now about 70,000 participants over 4 days. It's always the last week of February. The weather is always magnificent. Come on down next year and see us. But here we've been applying these facets of the EPA's guidelines of source reduction, plus feed hungry people, plus industrial uses, and plus composting. So we're using really most of those in everything we do at the festival. So starting with food rescue, we've been doing now for 18 years. The very first one was actually by an accident. It was a weather condition caused an event to get canceled, and there was a lot of food left over. And that caused the awareness of, oh, this can happen anytime. There's always going to be food left over. And the action towards what do you do with it? How do you find refrigeration? How do you find transport? And how do you protect it? So over the years, then we've grown that, and we now have a team of about 75 student volunteers, about 12 golf carts circulating around all the time, and 1 or 2 refrigerated trucks on hand all the time. Normally the trucks are either from Feeding South Florida or from the Caring Place Miami Rescue Mission, a couple of our major partners in this area. This year we reinstituted something we tried many years ago, and that's a full-on green team, where we're actually guiding participants, festival goers, in the process of what to do with their waste as they move from one venue to another, or one even food station to another. And so we increased our volunteer needs from 75 students all the way up to 400 students this year. It's a massive undertaking, 7 major events ranging from 4,000 to 7,500 attendees each. All food and wine events, and we were chasing down every last scrap of leftover food that we could. So what we weren't able to rescue to feed hungry people with, then we were trying to direct into the proper bins for composting so that would be handled correctly as well. At the same time, we were separating solid waste recycling, plastic and paper and glass, and making sure that that was separated also from just plain trash, whatever didn't fit into the other 2. And so we would have tri-stations all around the venues. We had 38 tri-stations at one venue, and we had 60 some at another one. And so it was quite a large undertaking, and we'd have 1 or 2 students attending each one at a time. A new compost program was reinstituted this year as well, to take care of as much as we could of the additional food waste that we weren't capturing for the food rescue program. And that went very well, considering it was the first year in over 10 years since we tried it the first time. We did it for a couple of years, about 10 years ago, but the timing didn't seem right. The cooperation wasn't there, either from the vendors or even from the public. The public just wasn't that aware at that time. And something has shifted over the last decade, and we have a very much more aware crowd coming through. I think it's the millennials are beginning to push the baby boomers out, and the Gen Zs are close on their tails. And they have a whole different mindset, and they're much more interested, much more cooperative with these types of initiatives. So we're very excited that the first year bringing this back was very successful, and we're looking forward to continuing that and improving on that year every year. Wanted to share with you of the many years that we've been doing the food rescue. This is an interesting graph because it shows you from when we started, where it was just sort of accidental and okay, let's just kind of catch what happens to be left over, to actively seeking out, communicating with all of the 200 or so chefs that are involved in the production of this, communicating with the people who do the storage, communicating with the event managers and so forth throughout the events. And we just increased every year from 2010, you can see right up to 2014, 2015. Just every year we were finding more food. It was the same event, mind you. It wasn't increasing maybe 5-10% in size every year, but not by those leaps and bounds. And then something interesting happened. The fact that we were creating so much awareness as to the waste and communicating with so many stakeholders in the process, many of these stakeholders began to really take a closer look at what they were ordering and what they were bringing out into storage and out of storage and onto the venue. And they found gradually efficiencies. And we saw those numbers coming dramatically down. Again, mind you, the size of the festival did not change that much. These numbers are really, really striking when you consider it's the same group of events. And then we discovered something else very interesting around 2017. It bottomed out. And from 2017 to the present day, it seems to be like water that's found its level. So we're now right around 20,000 to 25,000 pounds of food every year is being recovered. And although that sounds like a very large number, it seems to be the right amount, considering you've got 7 venues, you've got 70,000 people going through, 200 chefs, each one with their own food station. There has to be waste. They cannot run out. They have to bring more than they are sure that they'll need, because this is their livelihood. This is their marketing. These are their businesses that they want to put their best food forward. They don't want to be running out of food when you've got that type of customer in front of you. So I thought you would find that bit of data very interesting. A lot of our food is going to the Caring Place, Miami Rescue Mission. We've also partnered with Feeding South Florida, which is the major food bank in this area, part of the Feeding America system. But a lot of the most of the prepared foods then are going directly to the rescue mission and to its counterparts, Broward Outreach Center, and a number of other homeless shelters that are in the South Florida area. And we made a calculation a while back, and I got to admit this is an old number that needs to get updated, but we had already found that through our student efforts, we had already donated more than 250,000 meals to the mission. And one of the things we do with my class is that we do a follow-up, and the students actually go over there and serve meals at the mission. They'll serve a dinner to 300 or 400 people going through their homelessness recovery program, or for those homeless and food insecure that are invited in from outside. An interesting picture there of the tray. This was at a lunch, which was the day right after our Italian night on the beach. And you can see what a good job our students did of capturing and recovering all of that usable food with the pasta, the salad, the garlic bread, and even dessert. So there was plenty to go around the next day. A lot of it gets redistributed also through the other homeless shelters that they work with. A certain amount of it gets frozen, but it all gets used. Every last bit of it gets used. It probably takes them 2 or 3 weeks to use up all the food that we recover at the festival. So talking about source reduction, again, that's the top of the pyramid. Through this effort, through this experience of the South Beach Wine and Food Festival, we've really actively sought out to learn more about different facets of food waste reduction, and to bring that into our laboratories, into our classrooms, and even to share with local industry here in South Florida. And one of those is the food waste reduction method taught by the James Beard Foundation, the Full Use Kitchen, where we hosted a workshop for local chefs here, essentially learning how to work entirely from food scraps. It's a very interesting process. Another one of our partners is World Wildlife Fund, and they, in partnership with the American Hotel Lodging Educational Foundation, have created a number of years back the hotel kitchen methodology. It's also been extended to the restaurant industry, retail, farms, schools, and universities. But we, of course, are focused here on the hospitality and tourism aspects of hotels and restaurants primarily, and we'll be doing some more of these in the near future. So again, the food recovery hierarchy, it aligns also with looking at it from a different aspect. On the right, we're talking really about first prevention, and then preparing for the reuse where we can, recycling what we can't, and the last resort is always the disposable. So the landfill incineration on this left is the one to always be avoided as much as possible, and so we do. And so we're now carrying that through other parts of our teaching here. We teach wines, we teach spirits, and we teach beers. We even teach coffees here as part of our hospitality management program, particularly in the culinary and restaurant management major. And in our brew science lab, this is what's fun about my job, is that through working in the festival, our own students, our faculty, our grad assistants, they're all picking up on the desire for food waste reduction, and they're getting the cues, and they're carrying it forward and coming up with things that honestly I never thought about. So one day a few years ago, I noticed that our tech assistant, our lab assistant in the brew science lab was recovering all of the leftover grains after they'd finished the brew process and baking bread with it. And then I found out that our wine professor was using that bread in the in the wine tastings and the pairings and in his teaching, and so on. So these are just great byproducts that we can all learn from. Another thing that we've been working on lately, we found out that we have a beekeeping association here at FIU, and we're collaborating with them now on getting enough honey from their process to mix with these grains and create granola bars. And in both of these cases, what isn't actually we don't use in these processes, then it's also going to compost. So we're trying to avoid any leftover food, even the smallest grains if we can. We started a coffee course in coffees and teas and non-alcoholic beverages recently, and a few of our students started a coffee guild. And I just learned this last week. They've come up with a process to make scrubs out of the spent coffee grounds. I mean, it's just so exciting when you can see these things happening and you didn't even start it. It's just watch it grow. It's just amazing. So I mentioned that what doesn't get used in those secondary processes is then going on to composting, which is further down on the triangle, but still very desirable thing to do. So our students are now learning in the restaurant management lab how to separate the right products for our composting process. And of course, every composting process is different. Each garden accepts different types of organic materials, and you have to check and see which one that you can work with will accept what you have. But in our case, we have one on campus, and it's all greens, it's all veggies and fruits, with some grains like the from the coffee grounds and from the brew process. So we have our students go out into our nature preserve and help put together this system of three large compost bins here. We have one for each semester. So it goes a full academic year. At the end of the full academic year, the last bin then is turned over into the finished compost, and a new bin is started for the next semester. That finished compost then goes into our agroecology department's organic garden. And I have a graduate student right now working on experimenting with different ratios of compost to original soil and different types of vegetables to see what is actually going to grow the best in which soil and which combination. Right now we're working on tomatoes, green peppers, and okra, I believe. And then when we're done with that process, we will be selecting or I should say our chef will be selecting what he finds is going to work best to bring back to the very same place it started. So, almost a year earlier, and that's back into the food production lab. And so there they will be teaching again, and trimming some more of those same vegetables that were something else the previous semester, and then finally serving those at our weekly bistro, which by the way is on Wednesdays during the school year. Please come and enjoy our lunches and dinners served by the students at the bistro. That tomato on your plate might have been an onion 2 semesters earlier. You just never know. So so we're really teaching all about the circular economy, right? And but we're teaching by doing. So the students have their hands on these processes, and they don't have to be paying close attention to a textbook. They're learning it by doing it, and that's the absolute best way to learn. So that's really the process that's kind of leading us, and it's taking us in some great directions. We're even getting off campus from time to time. Other major events in the area have asked us to help out and support their event, their efforts. The Ultra Music Festival, we have a green team there every year supporting their efforts. The Super Bowl Food Rescue US reached out to us, and we've supported them at the Super Bowl, as well as the new Formula One racing, which is now in Miami. We're going to have our second annual race coming up in a few weeks as part of a 10-year contract. So I think we'll see probably more Super Bowls coming back. I don't know when the next one is. Certainly the Miami Formula One and Ultra Music Festival every year. And as Joanna mentioned, we have the Tortuga Festival coming up this weekend too. So there's always something going on in the events industry in South Florida. And I really thank you for listening and putting up with this old professor for 10 or 12 minutes or whatever I took out of your day.
We love it. Thank you, John. And I wanted to add, your compost bed down in at the South Campus was born at the inaugural Food Waste Prevention Week of 2021. You may have mentioned it. If you didn't, I wanted to be sure.
I did not mention that. You're absolutely right. I'd forgotten about that. That was
Isn't that
it was during that Food Waste Prevention Week that we actually put in the first organic matter into the first bin. You're absolutely right.
right? So just a couple of, I'm overwhelmed with the information that all three of our presenters gave, and I'm sure our attendees are as well. So I want to spout out just a few things, and again, call upon Francis to please put up our Sustainable Events Network website, senfc.org, in the chat. We have a robust tab that offers advice on how to stage a food rescue. We've got a simple 1, 2, 3 step process, as well as a more enhanced version. There's a link to the Bill Emerson Good Samaritan Act, ongoing information. Just wanted to make sure we highlight that. But I think what is so exciting out of this group is to see that we are the circularity, not only of what we are with the food, but as we move through the generations, and how inspiring and hopeful it is to see that schools like FIU's Chaplain School of Hospitality are really training that next generation to make this endemic to their culture, as opposed to something you have to think about. It will just become part of the routine, and that's the goal. So I do want to invite a couple of questions if anyone has them, but I also wanted to highlight just some pearls that came out at me from the three. I think one that really stuck with me was the 20 to 30% of food at any event is wasted, as highlighted by Lisa. We have to really ponder that. And as John mentioned, there's inevitable food waste. Even with the best possible planning, there is that inevitable waste. So as Sid mentioned, every event is a handshake into local communities. So if we think about this, the strategic planning, the key stakeholders all involved in understanding and the buy-in on if there is food wasted, that it's going to be donated. But watching your counts, planning, using your history, knowing your attendees, knowing their eating habits. Do they come down for breakfast? Do you need to over order? All of that is the precursor to the inevitable food waste, and making sure that that food rescue is part of the plan, put into the contract, and basically embedded into the event from the minute that you start planning it. Do we have any questions? I see we've had some things added to the chat. I also wanted to highlight what you mentioned, John, how important this is for those of you who are staging large events and festivals, many of you with municipalities. Volunteerism. You cannot do this all on your own, especially if you are an office of one, which many of you are, and we understand that. That's when you can call upon student groups, college groups, high school groups, in public interest groups and clubs. A lot of kids, I know in Florida, you have to fulfill a number of volunteer hours before you graduate from high school in this state, and that applies in a number of communities across the country. So you can partner with organizations, Food Rescue US, and Means Database. There are organizations that can assist you with the food rescue, and all of us on this event are available to be reached for any kinds of questions. Let me see here. I'm just checking the chat. Everybody's saying fantastic program, wonderful work. There's the website for FIU, senfc.org. I want to invite any last questions or comments before I ask everyone to stay tuned, take a brief break of 15 minutes, and we are going to come back on this same link, so you can just mute and turn your camera off. We've got a fantastic live chef demo coming up called Need to Dough Better. And John, you want to give us a teaser of what we're coming up? Will the presentations be part of the recording? Am I correct? They will?
Yes, they will. And so, yeah, so I showed on I think the first slide, my partner in crime, Chef John Noble Massey. So he'll be live in the demo kitchen with some of his students. We have a club called Sustainability, S-O-U-S, Sustainability. We have another club called Panther Chow, which is working to recover food. And by the way, Food Recovery Network is a nationwide organization on college campuses. So you could, if you have an event in an area where you could go on their website. It might be, I'm not sure, frn.org, I'm not sure, Food Recovery Network, and see if they have a chapter anywhere near your event. Reach out to that chapter of students and see if they'd like to partner with you. But yeah, so we'll be down in the demo kitchen in just a few minutes, and we're picking up on this idea of the bread and the beer and this, what do you do with, that process of leftover. We know what we do with the leftover grain. What do you do with the leftover bread? So the chef has asked his students to come up with some interesting ideas that they'll be showing us.
So we'll be resuming programming at 4:15, and I want to once again thank Sid and Diane Mandelbaum and Lisa Accardi and Dr. John Buschman for sharing their expertise with us this afternoon. It's very much appreciated. This event is recorded. It will be posted both on the Food Waste Prevention Week website as well as senfc.org website. And so share this with your friends and colleagues who may not have been able to attend live. And we will see you in just a few minutes at 4:15. John will be kicking us off with Chef John. So thank you so much.
When we first started discussing the Bachelor of Arts in Global Sustainable Tourism, we looked at Florida's #1 industry, hospitality and tourism. More specifically, the tourism dollars that are generated by that industry.
Tourism can be a tool for conservation. In fact, in the long term, conservation and preservation of resources and economics go together. And that's what we're trying to do and will do here in the state of Florida.
By focusing on protecting our environment and natural resources, we're thereby protecting the tourism dollars to the state of Florida.
The Bachelor of Arts in Global Sustainable Tourism is very unique. There are only 6 or 7 programs of this nature in the entire country.
This program fulfills a unique need in the industry for people who will be qualified to be managers in sustainability, to not only take care of customer experiences, but also the need to balance our environment and planet.
FIU's Global Sustainable Tourism Program is unique. It combines the hospitality management school with the Department of Earth and Environment, so students have both aspects which are necessary really to understand things, how to deal with them in a changing environment.
Our focus is to prepare the next generation of hospitality and tourism managers with a specific skill set in sustainability efforts. In doing so, they'll have a better understanding of the impact of tourism on our environment.
This degree was created to give students the skills to not only be experts in hospitality and tourism, but to also have the scientific background to be able to recognize and mitigate environmental and sociocultural issues.
Our students in this program will be able to learn about sustainability, environmental sciences, and the business of hospitality and tourism, and be able to apply it in any industry.
Courses in this program will not only be taught by tourism and hospitality professors, but also by professors with a specialty in earth and environmental sciences.
Our students will be uniquely prepared to field jobs in the cruise line industry, the hotel industry, the airline industry, convention and visitors bureaus, meetings and plannings, tour operators, and so on.
This degree is important because it enables us to safeguard our natural and cultural resources that help us attract tourism in the first place. Without these quality resources, we have no tourism product to offer. The need for this degree is in preserving what actually makes us unique and special so as to ensure the future of this industry.
Would not happen if it wasn't for the FIU students.
Any live event experience when you got timeline and time sensitive and it's now, like this is great experience for you all for life.
What does it mean to run a world-renowned wine and food festival on the sands of South Beach? It means organizing 1,200 FIU student volunteers to run amazing events all over Miami Beach.
It means supporting my alma mater while partnering with some of the greatest chefs and restaurant groups in the country.
It means work hard, play hard, eat, drink, educate, and last but not least, go Panthers.
Thank you, FIU students, for making this festival happen. It's been a lot of fun.
This is Diane Way. I just want to send a lot of love and a lot of patience to all the volunteers. Thank you guys for giving up your time.
Neil Patchkaris here. I'm with David Bertka.
Yo, what up? Happy Drag Brunch.
We just want to say thank you so much to all the hospitality people, for everyone at FIU, for all that you do.
Jet Tila here. Thanks so much for all you do for the festival. Your future is limitless, and it's because of FIU. See you.